night before I began working at the California Men's Colony, I was so nervous I could hardly sleep. The Men's Colony is a medium security prison in San Luis Obispo, California. Its inmates include murderers, batterers, and rapists. I had never worked with people like that before. Since getting my psychology degree, I'd counseled individuals with learning and developmental disabilities or behavioral disorders. My only exposure to dangerous criminals came from watching movies and television. So based on these Hollywood cliches, when I reported to work that first morning, I expected to see a facility full of muscular, tattooed, intimidating young men. There certainly were plenty of those. But I quickly realized that I was just as likely to encounter a frail, elderly man with white hair walking with a cane. 20% of California's male inmate population is over the age of 50. Many inmates are in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s. Thousands of them face the prospect of growing old and perhaps dying in prison. So when I started at the Men's Colony, I was introduced to a reality that most people probably never think about. And that is the fact that eventually, many of these aging inmates will be diagnosed with dementia. Prison is a highly regimented environment, heavy with rules and routines. Among other things, inmates must remember when to stand to be counted, when meal times are, and which areas of the prison are considered out of bounds. In addition to having trouble remembering all of these rules, the inmates with dementia are especially vulnerable to other prisoners taking advantage of their confusion and memory loss, manipulating them out of food, money, and other personal property. Take a moment and imagine what this would be like for someone with dementia, someone whose entire routine can be thrown off at any time by something as significant as a riot among inmates, or as mundane as a foggy morning that covers the prison in clouds, unpredictably interrupting normal programming anywhere from minutes to hours. Imagine what it would be like to live in such an environment and not remember how you got there or why, when you can go home, or even if you can go home. Keeping elderly inmates, especially those with dementia, safe and healthy is an enormous task, and one that could use a lot more attention in prisons across the country. But at the Men's Colony, someone did tackle this challenge about 20 years ago. Catherine Evans was a visionary recreational therapist. Working closely with custody staff, she created the Gold Coat program. They assign high-functioning general population inmates to serve as assistant caregivers to some of the prison's most vulnerable populations. They're called gold coats because the inmates wear gold-colored jackets over their blue prison uniforms. Catherine originally developed this program to assist inmates with severe mental illness, but after a while it was expanded to support those with dementia and other cognitive impairments. These men are gold coats at the California Men's Colony. On a typical day on the job, they start early, waking up before 6 a.m. They assist the inmates with dementia with getting dressed, stand with them in the medication line, and walk with them to the dining hall for breakfast. There, the inmates with dementia sit at specially designated tables for slow eaters, and the caregivers keep watch to be sure that other inmates don't steal their food. After breakfast, the Gold Coats escort the inmates with dementia to their daily stretching program and orientation group. That's where a recreational therapist leads them in exercises, reviews the day's scheduled activities, and leads a discussion about current events. As their helpers, the Gold Coats coach and encourage each inmate's participation in the activities and review information with them throughout the day. The Gold Coats then guide the inmates with dementia through some of life's most menial tasks that they're not able to do on their own anymore. Things such as showering, making their beds, or cleaning their one-man cells. The afternoon consists of more programs, including movie groups, bingo games, arts and crafts, sports activities, reading groups, and music and dance therapy. Throughout the day, the Gold Coats assist the inmates with dementia with keeping track of their various appointments for dental, medical, and mental health care. They walk with their charges to the designated area of the prison so that they don't get lost or fall prey to others. As the afternoon winds down, the Gold Coats often can be found providing companionship and support, listening to gripes, helping write a letter to family, or simply taking a walk around the track with someone to ease agitation and loneliness. They keep a watchful eye out for predatory inmates, and if any concerns arise, they alert the appropriate staff. At 3:45 every afternoon, all of the inmates, including the Gold Coats, must return to their assigned cells to be counted, a daily routine conducted by custody staff. After the count, the Gold Coats again escort the inmates with dementia to the medication line and to the dining hall for dinner. After dinner, they assist them with getting ready for bed and help them settle into their cells where they can watch TV or go to sleep early. During the evenings, the Gold Coats take the opportunity to rest or attend their own evening programs, such as self-help groups, religious services, or college courses. The Gold Coats do not provide hands-on care, nor are they intended to replace the staff who have ultimate responsibility for all of the inmates. Yet they are invaluable caregivers. With their assistance and support, we're able to keep the inmates with dementia housed amongst the general prison population for longer, where they have more opportunities to socialize, exercise, and learn. Without the Gold Coats, many of the inmates with dementia would have to be housed in hospital-type settings with limited opportunity for outdoor activity or social interaction, an environment which would likely lead to faster deterioration. But many of us, as outside observers, would have a hard time reconciling these men's two identities: someone who is capable of committing a horrific crime against another human being, and somebody who helps gently guide an elderly man through the process of showering, dressing, and eating. Being a Gold Coat, as with any caregiver, requires incredible patience, flexibility, frustration tolerance, and the ability to find unique ways to work around a problem. For these men, these attributes were not part of their skill set at the time they committed their crime. But the benefits of the Gold Coat program don't stop with the inmates who receive the assistance. The program has a significant positive impact on the Gold Coats themselves. These men are carefully selected and closely monitored by staff, and not every one of them chosen for the position turns out to be a good fit. For those who are a good fit, however, the experience can be incredibly transformative. Recently, I sat down with these 6 veteran Gold Coats to ask them about their experience. All of them have been convicted of murder and are serving life sentences with the possibility for parole. We spoke for nearly 2 hours and had a moving and powerful discussion about what it means to be a Gold Coat and the impact that it has on their lives. Here's some of what they shared with me. This is Mr. Verdugo. He has been incarcerated for 25 years and a Gold Coat for 6 years. Mr. Verdugo shared that his transformation began prior to becoming a Gold Coat, saying, "I needed to find positive ways to deal with life's problems." The other Gold Coats echoed this thought, having recognized the need for change well before becoming a Gold Coat. But they all credit the program with the magnitude of the change that they have achieved, and none believe that they would be the men that they are today without this experience. When asked what makes this change possible, the issue of trust was a common theme. This is Mr. Burdick. At the time we sat down to talk, he had been incarcerated for nearly 40 years and a Gold Coat for more than 10 years. Mr. Burdick said, "Coming from a background of violence and dysfunction, we didn't know how to trust or be trusted." Yet the very fact that they have been chosen for this position reflects the trust that we as staff have in their ability to do such an important job, that we would see the potential in these men and recommend them as caregivers speaks volumes to the men themselves. This is Mr. Baxter. He has been incarcerated for 23 years and a Gold Coat for 5 years. Mr. Baxter has a particularly poignant connection to the inmates that he assists, as his own mother passed away from the complications of dementia while he was in prison. Of being chosen to be a Gold Coat, Mr. Baxter said, "I ran from this job, but it meant something to me that they would give me a chance." So he decided to take it. The importance of being needed also has an impact on these men. The inmates with dementia cling to them, both figuratively and literally, recognizing the Gold Coats as a stable and consistent force in an otherwise extremely confusing environment. This is Mr. Montgomery. He has been incarcerated for 30 years and a Gold Coat for 7 years. Mr. Montgomery said, "Lives can transform when you are needed." It's through this process of being needed that these men have begun to allow themselves to feel, to develop empathy for the first time, and to nurture healthy relationships, both with the inmates that they assist and other important people in their lives. Through helping another human being, they've learned how to access feelings that they spent decades stuffing away. This is Mr. Evers. He has been incarcerated for 26 years and a Gold Coat for 7 years. Mr. Evers said, "Before I became a Gold Coat, I would never acknowledge any vulnerability. That would be a sign of weakness." Today, he and the other Gold Coats are able to sit with and process their emotions, share the most tender parts of themselves, and acknowledge their vulnerabilities. This is Mr. Barnhill. He has been incarcerated for 21 and a half years and a Gold Coat for 3.5 years. Mr. Barnhill said, "I used to see myself based on my past, and now I have a different past." These men spoke of a change in their self-worth. They've developed positive self-regard, emotional maturity, and a feeling of belonging to something that is good. They can see a future that's no longer based on a single horrific act. And while they can't undo that past, these men are beginning to discover a way to move forward from it, and perhaps in some very small way, give back to society for their crimes. They see a different future for themselves, and all of them hope to be free one day. Since I began working with the Gold Coats 6.5 years ago, 10 of them have been released from prison, having been deemed by the parole board to no longer pose a significant threat to society. And working with the Gold Coats has changed me as well. I am constantly in awe of these men and what they do, day in and day out. Caregiving is exhausting, often thankless work. Yet every morning these men get up to assist the inmates with dementia. Seeing the changes in them changes how I view all of us as human beings. I meet weekly with Gold Coats, and my office door is open for them to speak one-on-one as needed. I've celebrated their achievements with them, an A in a college course, or the rekindling of a relationship with a family member with whom they'd lost touch. I've also offered support during times of despair, the death of a mother, or the parole board's denial of a release date. We've shared laughter and tears. And if I met these men as they are today, I would never guess that they once were murderers. Yet society at large tends to reduce people to labels: criminal, thief, killer. And we in the helping profession sometimes reduce our patients to their symptoms: lacks empathy, emotionally volatile, acts out. Yet now more than ever, I realize the importance of seeing beyond these labels. Every week, I meet with incarcerated men who are finding something new in themselves, something that eludes easy categories and transcends their old identities. How do you explain the fact that a man who once took a life is now a caregiver? That someone who inflicted great pain is now dedicated to relieving pain? Which version of this person is the truth? The reality is that the beautiful complexity of nature makes both of these true. And by shouldering responsibility for someone who needs them, these men have begun to discover another way of life and a happier, healthier version of themselves. Thank you.